Okay, Kimberley, Jack, hello,
Hello. Hello, Phil.
hello, hello. How lovely to meet you both. Jack, we've been on some group calls at the same time before. I might have even fielded a question to you a few times, but Kimberley, this is our first time connecting in any way other than, Facebook Messenger. So it's lovely to actually be in the same cyberspace. Anybody use that anymore? Do the kids still use that term, cyberspace? Great to be
Good
here
question,
with
actually.
you. So
Thank you.
we're here as an opportunity, right, to show some people that might be interested in this perfecting deep listening retreat in Bali that you guys have put together, which is between May 29th and June the 2nd, right? See, I'm gonna come clean. People are gonna wonder, how is he remembering all this stuff? I've got it written down right in front of him. I'm actually reading it off the screen here. So um, yeah, and we're going to talk obviously a little bit more about that. I just want to say, Jack, every time I've seen you, um, I've watched, I haven't always attended things, but definitely watched my fair share. Come across as one of the most warm, compassionate gentlemen in this community. It's always heartwarming to spend time with you in your presence, even if it is in cyberspace. I'm sure anybody who comes and spends time with you in Bali is going to have a life altering experience, I'm sure.
Well, I really appreciate hearing that from you, Phil, especially coming from somebody like you who has really gotten a really good reputation.
So, yeah, Jack, like so many, um, I first came across you and your work, I put work in quotes. I think I bought your book, Somebody Should Have Told Us, in August 2013, and I think you wrote that book quite a bit before that, right? In the mid 2000s, 2005, 2006, something like that. And clearly that, I know you've also published many others, Modelo, Seduced by Consciousness, a whole raft. They're all beautiful, beautiful books. I remember, so I haven't done homework and gone back to look at that book. If I was a professional interviewer and podcaster, I might have read that before this, but I'm cold clean. Haven't reread it since. But I do remember it being very practical. So I don't know whether that feels accurate to you, but we'll start off perhaps a little bit practical, but in the background sense, like to help people to understand who they're witnessing on this call. What's Could you share with us a little bit of your backstory, how you came across the principles and the impact that that had on you, and maybe if there's a practical nature of that impact as well that comes to mind?
Sure. Actually, before I do, I am right now in the middle of running a course that on somebody should have told us that I had that somebody twisted my arm to do. And um, so I've actually started to go back and read it. And I haven't read it for a really long time. And I am actually shocked at how good a book it is.
Right.
I mean, people have talked about it for a long time, but I thought, my understanding has really grown since then. And yet, as an introduction to the three principles, I stand behind it.
Yeah,
But
it was my introduction, and it's the book that I do recommend when somebody asks about an introduction for the principles. Yeah, that is the one that I recommend because it
thank
was
you.
mine. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So to get to your question, I was involved in the prevention of problem behaviors, and pardon me because I've told this story like about 2022 times. Uh, but I was minding my business. I had gotten to the point where I really thought I understood what was going on in the field enough to write a book about it. My book was just about to go to press, and I was invited to a prevention workshop that a guy named Roger Mills was speaking at. And I didn't, I just spent 3 years of my life researching what worked in prevention, and I never heard of the guy. And he started to talk about these amazing results he got in these two low-income inner city housing projects, which was Modelo. And I was suspicious because I never heard of this guy and I was doing a lot of research on it. but he brought with him a couple of women who had their lives completely turned around from going through whatever he did there. And I could tell from listening to them that they would never go back to the way things were. And these people's lives were a mess originally. So I really started to sit up and take notice. And then I asked Roger Mills if I could write a book about what. Well, first I got squeezed in something into my prevention book about it, just a little thing. And then I asked him if I could write a book about what happened in Modelo. Oddly, he said yes. So I went down there and interviewed the people, and it was incredible. And I got so turned on by it, I had to find the source. The source was Sid Banks. So I went up and saw Sid Banks, and the rest is history.
Mm.
Sid Banks blew my
Yeah.
mind. Literally, he just blew my mind.
And that term gets used to sort of refer to just simply being amazed. But I've been fortunate to have probably just two that really jump out moments of one reading a book where it actually felt like my mind was blown because whatever was making up my own personal mind then just seemed to just fall apart. And another one actually when was at that stage where I felt, yeah, I've got this, I understand it, I really get it. And I actually had a conversation with a colleague in this community with Dick and Bedinger, and that was just as recently as 2017. And I remember then just like feeling mind blown. So what might we have seen differently if we were watching Jack Pransky TV at that point?
Uh, well, you would have seen, I mean, I'm basically the same person, but
Hmm.
I was stressed out driven. I was, really trying to make things happen. And I don't think you would have seen a calm me. You would have seen a driven me. My relationships improved. Just everything about my life got better. It was fine before, but it got a lot better. And so I feel like and as I've gone along in the principles, my understanding has deepened and deepened and deepened, even when I wasn't looking for it to. And so now, sometimes I shudder to think about what I used to say back then, but it's all part of the process. It's an evolution.
You mentioned, did you mention retirement or did they make that up in my head? But I remember, Jack, that you posted an announcement of your retirement, by the way, and I noted it down. I actually copied the link to that post at the time because I was so moved by what you wrote. It was in, yeah, December 2019. And I want to read something from that post, but I want to ask you. So here we are talking about this retreat in Bali. So how is retirement going for you, Jack?
Not too well, retirement wise. No, I mean, I always had the idea that I would retire except if I had the opportunity to go on places on my bucket list.
Mm,
And Bali happened to be one of those places on my bucket list. And the last time I was in Australia, I was I was teaching with a wonderful woman in Melbourne, and she said a lot of people go to Bali for vacations and retreats from Australia. So we talked about at the time, why don't we do something together in Bali? So I thought that was a great idea. So I said, next time I come to Australia, we'll figure that out. Well, next I was invited to Australia to do a keynote for the Australian and New Zealand Mental Health Association. And so I had Bali on my mind. I called her up and she was too busy to do it. So I said, oh man, what am I going to do? So then I knew that I had two lovely people who had been in my mentoring groups who had an Australia connection, one of them being Kimberley. So I got in touch with Kimberley and the other person. And I said, how can I make something happen in Bali? And before I knew it, they wanted to do it with me. That's why I'm coming out of retirement for this. But I haven't been too successful because I'm such a soft touch. When people ask me to do
Well,
something, I tend to say yes.
I think there's many of us who are really enjoying your retirement, Jack. Really enjoying it. Um, I want to read you a piece, by the way, from that post. This is one of the things and it definitely leads in, and we'll get talking a little bit more about like deep listening. But I felt this jumped out for me when I revisited the post. You said, so again, coming clean, I'm reading this off my screen. This community is filled with such beautiful people. It is a very, very special group of souls, and I believe it happens because everyone is looking in the same uncommon inside out direction and going deeper together within it. This is the piece I particularly loved. It's not that other people aren't special, it's that this understanding seems to bring out the beauty and the specialness in people. Now, I felt immediately how, for me at least, that does seem to relate to what I consider deep listening, because for me, deep listening is a generosity in that. So, yeah, I'd love really for you to speak to that. How do you see what I've just read relating to deep listening, and indeed for you, what is deep listening?
Everything I said there is really true. I really believe that from the bottom of my heart. When people connect at that kind of a level, it's like all extraneous thoughts just fly out the window, and we're left with a heart to heart connection with each other. And that is essentially how I see deep listening is everything else is out of the way. But what we're tapping into, and I have to say that a lot of people who really talk about deep listening and know about deep listening and do it themselves, and I put myself in that category, we have not even scratched the surface. The reason I called it perfecting deep listening is because we can never, ever get it perfect because we are tapping into something that's so much more huge than we are. I was doing a training in Algiers, Spain, and that evening I was supposed to do something for the general public, just give a little talk for the general public, and I was talking about um, quieting the mind, and I asked people in the audience. In fact, I think I gave them a little activity at the time, and I had them like quiet their mind and not have any thoughts that come into it. And at the end, I kind of asked them, kind of tongue in cheek, how many of you had no thoughts? One hand goes up. One hand goes up in the audience. And I said, you had no thoughts? And the guy said, yeah, no thoughts. Come to find out, this guy was a psychic clairvoyant. And
Ah,
the next day, I went to a session that he did, and he was hearing things that from people were asking him things in the audience that he had no business knowing. So, how does he know this? By deep, 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 deep listening at such an incredible level that most of us haven't even begun to tap. So, when I'm talking about deep listening, I'm talking about connecting at that same kind of a level. And in order to do that, everything else has to be out of the way. Everything else. We just have to have that total, complete connection. We can only get better at it from where we are. Like I
yeah,
could
beautiful.
never dream of connecting at the level that that psychic could connect at. But I've had my moments.
And you know the how we connect, the nature of our connection with people affects all aspects of our lives, right? And not least of all, our connection with ourselves, right? A true self. But you know, whether we're coaches, parents, partners, you know, business owners or whatever, yeah, ability to really to connect deeply, intimately with others affects everything we do.
It is an intimate thing when people connect at that kind of a level. That's the amazing thing about it. The connections that happen with each other in a like a retreat like this, from from being in a state of deep listening together is something that I've never seen it happen so deeply, so fast with people. It's a wonder to behold, and it's truly beautiful. And it's like an intimate connection at that.
So, Kimberly, I see you nodding there. Like, is there anything here you want to share with us around the impact, at least of becoming aware of our nature of listening and deep listening for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, much like you, Phil, I'm quite new to the community, as in maybe 2021. And I'd read some other books and really understood everything at the level of my intellect. And it wasn't until I read Somebody Should Have Told Us, and I'd never heard of Jack Pransky, but somebody said, read that book. And so I did. And I just started to see things a lot deeply and a lot differently. And from there, I just added Jack on Facebook, got into one of his mentorship groups. I was like, oh my God, because I was in New Zealand at the time. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to be in that group. But I knew I wanted to be in that group and learn more from him. But when I was reading the book, the first thing that I started to play with was what Jack had talked about around wisdom, accessing our own wisdom. What does that feel like? And I had this thing come up and I was just like, let me play with this, whatever this guy's talking about. And I did. And the answers came to me. I was out pushing my daughter around and it was like, oh my God, that's what I need to do. So then I was like, gosh, this really works. And in the mentorship program, he, taught about deep listening. And I'm a coach. And what I noticed in the difference in the impact I was making, the conversations, I wasn't showing up to these conversations like, what questions do I ask? And filling my mind with like what direction it needed to go in, and that I had to prove myself and I have to make this impact. And what I learned from Jack is like, that's not my responsibility. All I need to do is show up, be absolutely curious, be in my own health, my own love for this person, and just see what arises. So it changed like my coaching, in such a big scale that then from there, people started referring people to me. So there's that. And then just to touch on what Jack was saying, I first met Jack in person at a similar retreat last May in Spain. And that retreat was just the most beautiful experience I've ever had. I've made some lifelong friends from there. One of the girls who's co-hosting, with both of them, I've been to see her in Berlin twice this month because we just have that sort of friendship, and that's come from that environment. And it was just so loving. And that's what I left with, that feeling of, wow, I didn't know we could connect like this and have that feeling. And so I think that answers your question.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Jack. And I wanted to share. So I think it was this sentence that had me note down your retirement post. You said, "Impact seems less to do with a teacher's eloquence, but perhaps more to do with their ability to listen deeply within this understanding." And I love that bit at the end, within this understanding, to listen deeply within the understanding of perhaps how this being human gig works. Would you like to speak to that?
It's like, what is left when everything else is stripped away? Our souls are connected with each other at such a deep level. And when that happens, people's minds completely relax. Or maybe that happens first, I'm not sure, one or the other. And then when people are in that kind of a completely relaxed state, that allows wisdom to like bubble up to the surface or shoot up to the surface or something like that. And that's what changes people. New insights at a deep level from wisdom are what changes people. And that's why the eloquence of somebody speaking about the principles isn't what does it at all. It's the connection that does it. And Dickon is a good example because he is all heart.
Oh,
He's all love and he's all heart. And people just feel good around him. And so that's the uh, atmosphere, you could say, that we hope to create within this retreat, that people kind of like rise together in their levels of consciousness.
Well, you've blown. My next question was really, what is your hope and intention for people attending? Um, and so I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but also I want to ask you both. So I don't know if you want to go first again, Jack, but I'd love to hear from you both as to why Bali.
Um,
And I will say, let me just say, sorry to interrupt, but I've got a connection to Bali. I actually moved and lived in Bali. I moved to Bali in October 2019, and I was there throughout the pandemic. So I stayed there for a year and a half. And so in the last 4.5 years, I've lived in Bali for 3 years, I think it is, or maybe 3.5. So yeah, it's a second home for me, and it's a very, very special place. So yeah, I'm curious.
I think Bali has been on my mind ever since I saw the musical South Pacific.
Mm.
I was just thinking the other day that there was a song in there called Bali High that really touched me. And I didn't even realize that it was about Bali. It's about Bali. And when I put the two together, I had to go. It's just one of those places that it's called to me. My hope is that, and I know this is going to happen, we are going to be in a beautiful feeling together. We are going to drop into a beautiful feeling. And out of that beautiful feeling is going to come a connection to deep listening, or I should say, through deep listening to other people that that is over and above anything we've experienced before with strangers. When people grasp what deep listening is by being immersed in the experience of it, you can't really just talk about it. So people have to be immersed in the experience of it, and they see it for themselves, and they, like Kimberly was saying, she has taken it with her in her coaching practice and everywhere else in her life. So that's my hope.
Yeah, I guess having been on this retreat myself, my hope is for people to experience the same. And before coming to this understanding, as I often share, I used to be a very sad, lonely person. Nobody saw that in me, but that was my day-to-day experience for 39 years. And coming to this understanding, and I was very fortunate to be mentored by Jack very early on. My life has changed. I don't have those thoughts anymore. I mean, I do, but I don't give them attention. It doesn't show up in my life how it used to. And my life has changed radically. And yes, I'm a coach now, and it's helped my coaching practice. That's one aspect of it. But yeah, my life is more of a beautiful feeling, as Jack is saying, these days. So when I have some lows, I can navigate them a lot quicker than I used to. And, I guess recalibrate, find my equilibrium again. And that's what I hope for the people coming on this, is that's what I want to share. I want more people to, see that it can be different. And yeah, and why Bali for me? I actually had this idea last May I was sharing with you before we started this, Phil, that when I was on that retreat with Jack, I was like, I have to do a retreat with this man again, where I arrange it. So it was really, divine mind, divine timing that Jack made that offer. But at the time, I was also thinking about how I'd love to live in Bali with my daughter. I don't want to live in London anymore. I just want to go to be on the beach with my daughter. So when he said Bali, it was like all the dots were connecting. It was like a signpost. This is what you have to do. This is the next thing for you. So yeah.
And I have to say, Kimberly, that what you were talking about before just emanates from you now. You can just feel that feeling in you that just comes out. It's beautiful to behold, I must say.
Thank you.
I second that as well. I haven't, as I said at the beginning, I haven't met per se, and just love your energy. Like for me, it's all about the energy, but that's just a label that we apply, of course. But yeah, just love that. So thank you. So in closing, Jack, I want to ask you one more question because I'm still going to rib you a little bit more about this retirement business.
Go ahead.
Um,
I deserve
well, okay, this is one of my favorite questions to actually ask on my podcast, which yeah, for you, what is the purpose of what you do? Because you could have sat back and just enjoyed retirement, and yeah, for sure it certainly looks like you are enjoying your retirement. But I mean, not being involved, not flying around the world and what have you. So, yeah, for you, what's the purpose of what you do?
being of help to humanity in a nutshell. And I learned that directly from Sid Banks, because when he had his experience, he didn't ask himself, how can I make money from this? He said, how can I be of most help to humanity through this? And just being around him and seeing that that's the way he lived his life um, really inspired me. And that's, everything, I would say everything that I've done since then has been geared in that direction. I can't even help myself. It just is. So that's, even though I've stopped because of my so-called retirement, which I'm now calling a semi-retirement. I mean, I stopped trying to make things happen.
Mm,
That's the biggest thing. Stop trying to make things happen.
wow, thank you, Jack. And I
So
mean, you've
thank
helped
you,
me
Phil.
just like, well, that's definitely happened. That's definitely happened for me, certainly. So, Kimberly, anything else you want to add there, even if it's perhaps logistics from here, how people can step forward? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, absolutely. And just to, we had a bit of a talk about it. We'd love to extend our early bird pricing offer to anyone who listens to this and decides to book. It actually ended on the 31st of March, but like I said, we want to extend it to anyone who's listening. The best way to probably find out more about the retreat, if you go on to probably my Facebook at Kimberley Moriarty or Instagram, there will be a link, and I've got multiple posts about it. You can go through there and it'll take you to the website that we've created. And just from there, you can, book now and it will take you to an email. So you just need to email us. So
And also,
yeah,
wherever this showed up, wherever they get to watch or listen to this, I'm sure
Yes.
there'll be links. So
exactly.
that's
So
cool.
yes,
That's cool.
the link in my bio. And yeah, and I
Uh,
just wanted to say as well, Phil, like I just a real acknowledgement to you for helping us. Like as soon as we decided to do this, you were one of the first people I reached out to, and you've been so gracious and kind with your time and with your support. So really appreciate that. And that's also a testament to I think what Jack was pointing to, the love and the beauty in this community and the people in the community.
Yes, and thank you
So
thank you.
so
It's
thank
much.
you.
just a absolute no-brainer for me. I mean, gosh, and I'd say I'm a little bit gutted that I mean I'd been back to Bali a few times, and I only left there just over 2 weeks ago. So yeah, a little bit bummed that my travel plans this year haven't aligned. But given the nature of Jack's retirement, I'm not ruling it out sometime in the future. So
Great.
really beautiful, lovely to connect and have this conversation with you, and yeah, I'm excited just even considering anybody who chooses to join you, really, of what will undoubtedly occur within them. Beautiful.
That's great.
Thank you.
Come to Bali, folks. Even if the retreat is terrible, you'll be in Bali. Can't go wrong.
You get this and more. Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Thanks a lot, Phil.